Well, it's official, folks. Six Flags Great Adventure has blown it up. They are starting from scratch, they're rebuilding, they've called on Joel Embiid to say trust the process, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is this: Great Adventure has closed an obscene amount of rides all at once, and the park will simply never be the same going forward. At the core of these closures is, as I'm sure you've already heard, Kingda Ka, the world's tallest roller coaster, is closing its doors after 19 years of operation. And of course, Kingda Ka is noteworthy because of its record-breaking status, but within the state of New Jersey, this thing is an icon, right? I mean, when a New Jerseyan goes to describe something that's massive or monumental, they will call that thing the Kingda Ka of X, right? It's literally a part of New Jerseyans' vocabulary. That is how important and iconic this roller coaster is to the locals in that area, even beyond just being a good roller coaster. So needless to say, closing Kingda Ka in and of itself would already be a massive loss for the park. But don't worry, folks, there's more. In fact, we're also going to close another major roller coaster in Green Lantern. Wait, Green Lantern, really? Oh, let's go, baby! Woo! I mean, oh my God, it's so sad. Oh my God, I cannot believe we're losing Green Lantern. Wow, it's such a shame, man. Wow, I'm gonna shed a tear for that one. That beautiful torture chamber on wheels. I mean, that great stand-up roller coaster, man. We're gonna really miss it. No, but in all seriousness, that ride sucked. But it's still a major loss at the end of the day. And here's the thing, folks. If you order now, I'll throw in a few more rides for you. How about the parachutes, which have been there since basically ancient Egyptian times, it feels like. Twister, which is also in that same area as all those attractions. And then going across the park, I can't believe this one's closing. Something that also feels like it's been there forever is the Sky Ride. So, hey, this beautiful view, hey, you can go ahead and kiss that goodbye. It's just going to be Runway Mine Train El Toro now. And yes, I do mean that because, hey, take a closer look at Kingda Ka there. Turns out there's another one to add to the pile. The world's tallest drop ride in the world. You forget about Zumanjaro? Yeah, it's built into the side of Kingda Ka. Therefore, it's also going as well. So, hey, how about that? A nice 6-pack of rides that Great Adventure is closing to start 2025. Beautiful. But why are they doing this? Well, there's a few reasons, folks. I mean, for one, in case you're not aware, Six Flags is under new management. The theme park chain went ahead and merged with their #1 regional theme park competitor in Cedar Fair, creating a massive regional theme park giant here in North America. And that new management has already committed to a game plan of cutting costs across the company, amounting to upwards of $120 million annually by the end of 2025. So needless to say, closing 6 pretty major rides at Great Adventure is going to go a pretty far way as far as cutting into that number. However, I don't think the game plan is quite as nefarious or short-sighted as that might sound. As what if I told you that Great Adventure actually currently had the lowest annual attendance that they've had in over 3 decades? Yeah, you'd probably say that warrants some sort of drastic measures to be taken, right? You see, folks, let me ask you a question. When do you think Great Adventure hit its peak attendance? When did it have the greatest attendance it's ever had in its history? Probably, you would think maybe after Nitro opened, maybe after Kingda Ka opened, maybe after El Toro opened, right? I mean, once all 3 of those rides, that's the big 3 of the park today. I mean, once those 3 rides open, surely that's when they hit their peak attendance, right? No, not even close, in fact. In fact, the greatest attendance that Great Adventure has ever had in recorded history was back in 1999. Before Nitro opened, before Kingda Ka opened, and before El Toro opened. They did not need that big 3 to hit that number. And how did they do it? Well, in 1999, they had what I would consider to be a somewhat genius marketing campaign, that being the War on Lines, as Six Flags would go ahead and add 25 new rides all in 1 year to Great Adventure. These 25 rides were headlined by Medusa, a roller coaster that's still standing today, and needless to say, completely changed the landscape of Great Adventure and what it had to offer. So of course, a ton of people came out in droves to see what essentially the new Great Adventure looked like. In fact, so much so that Great Adventure actually cracked the top 10 most attended theme parks in North America. That's an absurd feat. And though 1999, of course, was a great success for the park, you might notice that I said this was the peak. This was the greatest attendance the park has ever gotten. Right? If these 25 editions were truly that great, this would have been the start of something special for Great Adventure. Instead, it actually was the beginning of the end for Great Adventure. You see, folks, the majority of these additions were not particularly great. As one might expect when you're adding 25 new rides, of course there's going to be some cost cutting, there's going to be some cheap ones in there, and in fact, a lot of the rides that Great Adventure added in 1999 were prototypes, first of their kind, and as a result, were prone to having issues and breakdowns and operational inefficiencies. And ultimately, a lot of these rides didn't even last more than 2 or 3 years and were ultimately removed from the park in short order. Though the prospect of adding 25 new rides brought people out in droves in that first year, once they actually saw what the park had to offer, it actually in turn made the park worse in quality, right? It lowered the quality of the park because there were so many bad rides or straight up mediocre rides added to the lineup that either didn't work or just weren't very good rides to begin with that you could probably find at your local carnival or county fair. And it ruined the brand image that Great Adventure had built up over the previous decades. And slowly but surely, over the coming years, attendance would drop fairly consistently. There would be some years where they would go up, but by and large, the trend was continuing to go down and down and down year after year until they hit sort of a bottoming out point in the mid-2000s. Despite adding Nitro, despite adding Kingda Ka, and despite adding El Toro, the attendance continued to drop. And it didn't plateau until about the mid-2000s, around 2006, where they hit a plateau around the 2.7 million guest mark, a 1.1 million guest drop from their all-time high just 7 years prior. This is an attendance level they would stay at for a number of years, despite all these major additions, these presumably high quality additions that tried to fix the brand image, that tried to improve the park, ultimately couldn't change what had already been done. Six Flags and Great Adventure had already been interpreted by the local population as being a park that pursued quantity over quality. They had a ton of garbage rides in their lineup, and it was supported by only a few quality rides that most guests did not find worth visiting the park for. Needless to say, Great Adventure found themselves in a bit of a rut, right? They couldn't, no matter what they were doing, they were adding record-breaking rides, world-renowned rides, some of the greatest rides in the entire country were being added to Great Adventure during this time. They couldn't buy more guests. They couldn't do it. That is, until the mid-2010s when something broke through. They found a crack that finally allowed them to start growing attendance once again. And basically, this strategy amounted to adding a new ride to the park every single year. For many parks in the Six Flags chain, this strategy really didn't pay off at all. But for Great Adventure, it paid dividends. Every year from 2011 to 2019, Great Adventure got a brand new ride added to the park, with the exception of the 1 year when they added the Safari to the park, which technically wasn't a new ride, but I guess it was technically a new ride for the park, so it meant something, I suppose. And though these additions varied drastically in quality, what it did do was it gave people enough reason to come back and give Great Adventure another shot because they were adding new stuff year after year after year. So not only did it give people who hadn't been in a long time a reason to come back, but it gave people who were regulars enough reason to come back each and every year. And this resulted in their attendance growing year after year after year, all starting from 2015, where coincidentally, they also added Holiday in the Park, meaning more operating days for the theme park, allowing them to have a greater opportunity to have more attendance. So that also helped for sure. And all these additions would eventually culminate in Great Adventure returning very close to their peak attendance in 2019, with over 3.4 million guests visiting in that year. It seemed like Great Adventure was back and they were on the path to not only meet that all-time high attendance number at some point down the line, but potentially smash it. The only problem was that, of course, COVID came along and closed the park for a year. Now, you might assume that that closure is what caused this all-time low attendance and caused them to be stuck at the bottom. They just never bounced back from it. No, not quite. If you look at 2021, they actually were on pace for a pretty good comeback. They had 2.9 million annual visitors in that year. And if we compare that to their competitors in the market, as well as competitors within the Six Flags chain, you'll notice that, yeah, everyone was kind of recovering around the same pace. So what happened? Well, folks, to keep a long story short, towards the end of 2021, Six Flags got a brand new CEO who came in with a genius game plan to jack up prices across all the Six Flags parks to exorbitant levels, with the game plan purposely being to lower attendance so that way the guests who are willing to pay more to come to the parks would have a better experience because they would have shorter lines and face thinner crowds. And I mean, that sounds nice, that sounds fine and dandy. The only problem is he raised the prices so much that it absolutely tanked attendance at all the Six Flags parks, despite the fact that 2022, the year that he did this, ended up resulting in record-breaking attendance for their competitors in SeaWorld and Cedar Fair. The regional theme park business was booming in this year, except at the Six Flags parks because of their terrible pricing strategy. However, when we take a look at our top 3 Six Flags parks, that being, of course, Great Adventure, Magic Mountain over in the Los Angeles area, and Great America over in the Chicagoland area, what we'll notice is that Great America and Magic Mountain did not see huge hits in attendance. Yes, they did drop attendance when other parks were obviously gaining attendance in 2022, but they weren't hit extremely hard. Whereas Great Adventure got absolutely destroyed in 2022. The attendance dropped over 800,000 guests. This number right here of 2.1 million annual visitors in 2022 was the lowest attendance Great Adventure has ever had on record in recorded history, right? Basically, as far back as we have attendance numbers for this park. And even though things did drastically improve once pricing was fixed at Great Adventure in 2023, the bottom line is this: at 2.5 million annual visitors, that is still by far the lowest amount of attendance that Great Adventure has had in over 3 decades. It goes without saying, folks, this park is in the toilet, okay? They are in a deep, deep ditch that cannot be solely blamed on the pricing changes in 2022, because if you look at Magic Mountain, you look at Great America, these parks are actually getting close to 2019 attendance levels at this point, right? They're recovering well. And again, they were not even hit that hard in 2022 when those pricing strategies came into place. Great Adventure, on the other hand, was absolutely killed, and they haven't even come close to recovering despite the fact that pricing has drastically changed in a big way. And I mean that in a big way, because look at the pricing right now for season passes. I mean, dude, this is like the pricing you could get back in like the mid-2000s. This is absurd what they're asking for a season pass at this point. Whereas you go back in 2019, the year where they had the most attendance in modern history, and the prices were way higher at that time. So, I mean, it's not pricing, okay? It is not pricing that's keeping people away. The problem is that all those additions that we talked about from 2011 to 2019, bottom line is this: the vast majority of them were complete and utter garbage. El Diablo, which replaced Rolling Thunder, a beloved roller coaster that had been there since the 70s, was removed after just a few years because it sucks so bad. We've already talked about how bad Green Lantern is, and Cyborg? You're lucky to see even a single person in line for that piece of junk. The bottom line is this: the strategy that Great Adventure put in place from 2011 to 2019 was essentially the exact same strategy that they had put in place in 1999. Instead of putting 25 rides in the park and all at once in 1 year, they just put a new ride in every single year. But the same mentality was still there. It was still quantity over quality. The vast majority of these rides, maybe even like 90% of them, were complete garbage, just complete trash. They were at best either mid-tier rides or actively bad. And when guests were forced to take a year off from the park in 2020 because it was closed, and they returned in 2021, they realized very quickly that, oh hey, this ride lineup sucks. Certainly, Jersey Devil Coaster opening in 2021 left a positive impact on the park, but all the other new additions since 2011 have been largely unremarkable, and unbelievably, 4 of the park's top 5 roller coasters are almost 20 years old. I'm sorry, is this a museum or is this a theme park? What are we doing here? Great Adventure basically got caught out adding just garbage ride after garbage ride, and people sort of came to the realization that, hey, yeah, the park is not in a good state whatsoever at the moment. And then you follow that up by jacking up the prices. Yeah, no wonder they left in a mass exodus. Who would have thought? The funny part is that back in 2018, I had actually somewhat foreseen this coming. I had called Great Adventure out for just adding garbage to this park year after year after year. And even though, by and large, that video sucks, my narration, my commentary, my persuasion tactics are terrible, my main core point was true. then eventually the guests would catch on to you just feeding them nothing but swill year after year and having your park be propped up on 20-year-old rides trying to hold the whole thing up. And here's the funny part. We talk about the fact that Jersey Devil was kind of the one saving grace at this time. Well, that is the last new ride that Great Adventure got. They haven't gotten a new ride in the last 3 years. As if guests needed more reason not to return to this park. Not to mention, of course, that top 5 that we talked about, well, a lot of it didn't even really operate all that well. Jersey Devil had issues when it first opened. Kingda Ka, of course, classic, continued to have operational issues. El Toro had 2 incidences that kept the ride closed for a substantial period of time and also probably lowered guest trust in the park. The only ride that really kept itself open was Nitro, as even Medusa was closed for a retheme for a short period of time. So yeah, I mean, again, just not giving guests a whole lot of reason to return to the park. So that brings us to today, and this absolute nuke being dropped on Great Adventure, closing 6 rides all at once. And again, what it comes down to is this new management who has been put in place of this new merged company who has walked into the door expecting Great Adventure to be one of their top dogs that they can rely on, and looking at what amounts to basically a complete disaster in front of them. A park that is in an absolute prime location, that has historically been a top performer, and it is underperforming across the board at the moment. One of the things that's noteworthy about these 6 closures is that Great Adventure did not give any sort of forewarning. They didn't give any sort of announcement. They just went ahead and closed them and then announced that they were closed after the fact. Normally, most theme parks will give you some notice and be like, hey, get your last rides in, or hey, we'll give you one last year to go ahead and experience this attraction. They did not do that for these 6 rides. And I know that a lot of people were upset about that, and understandably so. It definitely did not build any sort of goodwill with the general public. Absolutely not. It was a bad PR move. However, I completely understand why they did it, because this new management is, honestly, they're probably furious by what Great Adventure has become. They're probably disgusted by it. And quite frankly, they cannot sit back and wait and watch for another year and not do anything about it. They need to get started today. And they're saying that we're starting by gutting a whole bunch of rides that are not worth the amount of money that we're putting in to operate them and to maintain them, and we're going to replace them with something new. Kingda Ka, yes, an iconic roller coaster, a record-breaking coaster, no doubt. But let's not forget, folks, this ride was extremely operationally inefficient. There really weren't that many rides given over its 19 years of existence. I mean, even compared to Top Thrill Dragster, its sister roller coaster over at Cedar Point, which had more noteworthy technical issues than Kingda Ka, it actually even provided less rides than that over its history, even though it had more years of operation. Add on top of that the fact that this one ride supposedly cost millions of dollars to maintain and operate in and of itself every year. And yeah, the writing's on the wall. Yeah, get rid of the 19-year-old roller coaster that can't even operate and is costing you a ton of money. Yeah, simply put, get rid of it. That should have been order number 1, of course. But the bottom line is this, folks. It's a big swing, okay? Closing Kingda Ka, as well as these other 5 rides, is a huge risk, okay? Kingda Ka especially, but also these other rides have been sort of the pillars by which Great Adventure has been sort of standing, right? You take out one of the legs, you might take out the whole thing. And here's the thing. We already know 2025 is going to be a disaster. Nobody cares about this new Flash vertical velocity, whatever the ride's called, opening in 2025. Okay, it's a family boomerang. It might be okay, it might be fine, but it's not going to change the game by any means. It's become the footnote in the headline that reads, Kingda Ka and 5 other rides closing in 2025, right? That's the headline. The footnote is, oh, also they're opening a new roller coaster. Nobody cares. Literally nobody cares. That's why they're practically giving away season passes for 2025. Like, they know nobody's showing up in 2025. They know that year has already been thrown out the window. They're willing to sacrifice 2025 on a golden platter simply so that way they can have a greater chance of improving this park in the future and growing their attendance going forward. They've seen the market that it's in, the potential audience that it can pull on an annual basis. They've seen the attendance they've been able to reach in 1999 and 2019. They know this park has massive potential, and yet they're out here losing to Hersheypark, A park that's not even in a good location. Yeah, it's moderately close to Philadelphia, but they're nowhere close to New York City. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere in Harrisburg. Sorry, no offense, Harrisburg. I know you're a moderately good-sized city, but in comparison to where Great Adventure is, Great Adventure has the access to way more densely populated areas than Hersheypark, and yet not only are they losing to Hersheypark, they're getting absolutely murdered by them, absolutely massacred. And quite frankly, it's unacceptable. So there's new management. They're going with the strategy of let's burn it all down, raise the ground to zero, and start from scratch. We are going ahead and taking this park in the direction of quality over quantity. For too long, Great Adventure has been a park of having more and more and more and more rides, even if they're not of good quality or even of sound structure or design. And this new management understands that people are sick of it, right? It's blown up in Great Adventure's face twice now, okay? People are not going to go for it again. You have to change this park's mantra, right? It has to be that, yes, we might have less rides, but every single ride you find here is going to be of good quality. The infrastructure of the park is going to be modern. The theming is going to be actually enjoyable. The atmosphere is going to make the park fun to be in and not make it feel like you're walking through a concrete jungle. At least that's what I hope the game plan is. Because if there is some other game plan, right? If they're looking to build a hotel on this spot, holy cow, you are absolutely brain dead. You really want to build a hotel when nobody's even coming to the park to begin with right now? Those rooms are going to be dead empty. Are you out of your mind? You want to put some more cheap garbage in this place? Go ahead and kiss Great Adventure's attendance goodbye forever. You're never getting back to 3.8. You're never getting back to 3.4. You might even be lucky. You might be lucky if you ever get back to 3 million. And Hersheypark will have you dead in the dirt every single day for the rest of your life. Congratulations. So yes, throwing away these 6 rides is a risk. It's a gamble, right? You're going ahead and you're sacrificing 2025 as well. You're throwing that year out the door. You're basically saying, okay, we're fine with losing attendance and losing money that year. So be it, because we are investing in the future. The question is your investment in the future actually going to pay off, right? You've already burned guests a number of times just in the last few years with the price hikes and now closing these rides without an announcement, right? Your regular guests are going to be hard to convince to get back, right? They're going to have to be persuaded in a major way. So what you bring back to this park in that spot, and ultimately what comes to the park beyond that in the future, I have to imagine that El Toro is next on the chopping block, as it should be, quite frankly. Listen, I love El Toro, but that ride is almost 20 years old, and the back half has gotten extremely rough, and it's had a number of incidents. It's about time that that ride has something done to it. But regardless, Great Adventure is being put in a position where they have a chance to save their future. Because if nothing was done, this situation was only going to get worse and stay worse. So they had to do something. The problem is that if what they do is of mediocre quality, good night, it's over. But if they're able to execute on a high level, this park could see new heights in revenue, attendance, and profits that they've never seen before. Anyways, let you guys think in the comments. Subscribe. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.